Aloha everyone, this is Dr. BethAnne. I teach on personal transformation through embodying our intuition, and I do a thing on Fridays where I share a passage from one of my books. I call it Poetry and Perspective because I then share some perspective after I read the passage, some perspective behind the words. So for today, I'm sharing a poem from my grief book, Lamentations of the Sea. I wrote this book after I lost my brother Brent in 2016, and it documents my grief journey through poetry, prose, and personal reflections and narrative. So it's a poem I'm reading today called Peacemaker. You have to learn to make peace with it, all of it, even the things that don't feel peaceful, even the unanswered questions, even the unanswered life that you are busy trying to live. It doesn't all have to equate or fit together or logically add up. It just has to be whatever you've got to give in any given moment, and whenever you offer that, make peace that it's enough. So I know this is easier said than done because this passage really speaks to finding inner peace and finding perspectives and strategies that help ground us into a space of wholeness and enough, no matter what's going on in life and no matter what's going on inside of ourselves. And that's a really difficult thing to do. I get that. And part of how I think about that is that on a divine level, we're always enough. Our soul is always intact. We're always whole. There's nothing wrong with us. We are here to learn and to grow and to transform and to really step into our soul calling and to fully embody who we're meant to be. And that's great. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. That's what transformation and self-development is all about, is doing those things. But if we just sit with ourselves in any given moment, the truth of our soul is that we're absolutely enough. Now we're going to want to change and transform because we're hardwired for that, and because it feels really good, right? Doesn't it feel great to go through something and do the inner work and have something transformative happen, and you feel that you are this new being, and you can really see where you went through this like cocoon, caterpillar, butterfly metamorphosis, and you're busy flying with your new wings. That's a fantastic feeling, and that is what we're here for. But when I was going through my grief, I was not in a space where personal transformation was on my mind, which was really interesting because grief is a very transformative experience. But when you're in the thick of it, like, you're not necessarily thinking like, what can I learn from this? You know, this is going to make me a stronger person. You know, you're just like fighting to breathe. You're fighting to survive. Some of the feeling states and emotions and levels of self that I descended into after I lost Brent were dark, they were heavy, they were rageful, they were messy, they were chaotic, they were shadowy, and they were just part of being human. They were part of going through a grief journey. They were part of being in pain because I loved so hard. And that was perhaps the most transformative thing, is that if I could like hang on to, I feel this bad and dark because like I love so much, and that's why it hurts so bad. That helped me find the light when I was in the middle of it. But I wrote this passage about 6-7 months after my loss, and I was through the most like chaotic, ragged, sharpest edge, jagged parts, and I was really trying to find perspective then. I was trying to find the bigger picture. I was trying to find ways to look at everything I had just been through, and that idea that I was enough during the whole journey, that like when I was messy, when I was mad, when I felt socially isolated, when I felt grief is such a taboo, it was so hard for me to talk about, and it was really awkward for people because they didn't know what to say. You know, I just felt like I didn't fit anymore. I didn't even fit in my own life. I didn't know where I fit. And that idea that, can you just make peace with the fact that some things don't add up? Can you make peace with the fact that like not everything is a neat emotional experience that we can categorize and tuck away and say, oh, here's how I felt and here's what I learned and here's how I transformed it? You know, can you make peace that some part of you will always feel messy and slightly chaotic and really slippery and slidey when it comes to your feelings towards losing Brent? Could you just make peace with that and make space for it, right? Making space for it is another way of making peace with it, and knowing that it's still wholly, perfectly enough. You know, we are hardwired for transformation, but we also need to know that part of being human is being messy, and knowing that we're so loved. We're so loved by spirit, and even when we're messy, we're still seen as our beautiful, whole, divine selves. You know, we're not seen as any worse, and sometimes that's what we have to look to in those moments, is the truth of our soul, and not necessarily the truth of how we might be acting as a human being, because it's messy being human. So thank you for joining me for Poetry and Perspective, and for these off-the-cuff thoughts on finding inner peace and finding strategies and perspectives that help us find a sense of wholeness, even in the mess. And I appreciate your presence here. Have a beautiful weekend, and I'm wishing you much aloha and light.